What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're back with Game of Thrones and we got the history and lore for season 6. As you can see, we got like 90 minutes, so I'm ready to jump into this. But before you do, make sure you thumbs up and subscribe, and let's get it. Honestly, I'm just ready. I'm ready to just jump into season 7, but I got a little ahead of myself last time. You know what I'm saying? Season 3 and 4. Was it season 3 or 4? No, season 4 and 5. I just watched the whole season. In season 6, I had to watch like the first couple episodes. But this time we're actually doing a history and lore video of the previous season before jumping into the next one.
No army in the Seven Kingdoms can match the pride and chivalry of the Knights of the Vale. After all, they were the first true knights in Westeros. The Knights of the Vale were originally the Knights of Andalos, an eastern nation whose people invaded Westeros thousands of years ago. From the sea, the Vale seemed to the Andals an ideal new home. A wide, fertile valley isolated from the rest of Westeros and its kingdoms by a great mountain range. The first men who held it, moreover, were sparse and divided, and waded into battle with bronze axes and armor that couldn't match Andal horses and steel. But what the first men lacked in weaponry, they made up for in ferocity. Finally uniting behind King Robar Royce, the first men smashed the Andals in battle after battle, reclaiming the Vale and pushing the invaders back to the sea from whence they'd come. Learning from the first men, the remaining Andals united behind a leader of their own. Not a king or a lord, but a knight who'd been born in the Vale and knew it as well as the first men. Sir Artus Arryn, known as the Falcon Knight.
Okay, bet.
The armies of the first men and the Andals met beneath the Giant's Lance to decide the fate of the Vale. Sir Artus had many more mounted knights than the first men, who preferred to fight on foot. But the first men had seized the high ground, digging trenches in front of their ranks and lining them with sharpened stakes smeared with offal and excrement. 6 times the Andal knights charged, and 6 times the first men threw them back. But on the 7th, a fearsome Andal warrior broke through the ranks of the first men, and the Andals rushed through the gap. If King Robar had been wiser, he would have retreated and saved his army for another day. Then again, if he'd been wise at all, he'd never have risked his army of foot soldiers against mounted knights in the first place. When King Robar saw the falcon helm of Sir Artus across the field, he wagered that the Andals would break if they lost their leader, and rode hard for the Falcon Knight. The singers paint a pretty picture of the battle. The king in flashing bronze armor, the knight in silvered steel. But the duel lasted no longer than a verse of the songs, for King Robar had taken a Valyrian sword off a dead Andal lord, and it sheared through Sir Artus' helm much like a bird's wing through the air. As the Falcon Knight tumbled to earth, King Robar thought he'd won his desperate gamble. Then he heard the trumpets behind him. When he turned, he saw 500 fresh Andal knights pouring down the Giant's Lance. And the man at its head was also the man at Robar's feet. For Sir Artus, unique in that age, or indeed any age, esteemed cunning even more than martial strength, and had clad one of his knights in his spare suit of armor.
Okay, I'm like,
leaving
dude.
him to die at Robar's hand, while Sir Artus took his best horsemen up a goat track he knew from childhood. The charge of the Andal Knights broke the last great army of the first men, who would never again threaten the new Knights of the Vale. Some of the defeated would even join their ranks in the years to come, but many more fled to the mountains, choosing savagery over submission. Ever since, the Knights of the Vale enjoyed an exclusive position in Westeros. They could sally forth from the Vale at will, knowing that if battle went against them, they could retreat through the Bloody Gate, where no army could follow.
Exactly.
Until the dragons changed the game. When Aegon the Conqueror landed in Westeros, the Queen Regent of the Vale shut the Bloody Gate against the Targaryens and massed the Knights of the Vale behind it to lock it. But Visenya simply flew her dragon to a balcony of the Eyrie where the boy king was playing and gave the boy a ride round the castle in return for his mother's submission. With the conquest, no more could the Knights of the Vale hide behind their mountains, nor, they soon discovered, did they need to. For thousands of years, the other kingdoms had warred and treated to balance each other's might, whilst the Vale kept to itself. None realized what power the Vale could have until Jon Arryn defied the Iron Throne, refusing to surrender Ned Stark and Robert Baratheon to the Mad King. The North, the Riverlands, and the Stormlands couldn't have beaten the other three kingdoms by themselves, but the Knights of the Vale rode with them. Now, the North is freezing, the Riverlands are burnt, the Stormlands are spent, Dorne is distant, the Westerlands are weakened, and the Reach is paralyzed. Of all the great armies in Westeros, only the Knights of the Vale have yet to suffer exhaustion or defeat. The Bloody Gate is opening again onto Westeros, and through it passes opportunity.
We're gonna see if they keep that same energy season 7. Hold on. Damn, I don't want to. Alright, hold up. Damn, y'all gonna have to. Damn, what was it? I'm trying to think. It might be something. I think it's something when I'm editing. Yeah, it has to be because it's something like I think it had to do Red Wedding type shit. So this is already past for y'all. Meanwhile, I'm in like a week and a half. I'm just putting up the episode 1 for season 3.
All across the Iron Islands, men sit around driftwood fires and drink to the old way. When the Ironborn were feared, wherever the waves were heard. When our strength was in our ships, not our stories. I don't blame them. Drinking to the old way is easier than living it. Our ancestors took to the sea because the Iron Islands are shit without the crops that grow from it. 30 cold, wet rocks off the coast of Westeros, and a dozen more clustered around the lonely light deep in the Sunset Sea. But hard places breed hard men. The first men feared the sea. They had walked to Westeros, and even their fishermen never left sight of shore. I wish I could have seen the face of the first watchman to see our ships climb over the horizon. He was not the last. No matter how dark the night, or how high the waves, come dawn our prows cut through the morning mist and struck the beaches and riverbanks. Before the sun reached its height, we vanished again into the sea. Our longships filled with gold, food, scared children and sobbing women. For thousands of years, the Ironborn reaped up and down the Sunset Sea, driving the men of the Greenlands far inland, or into walled castles where they paid us tribute. In the depth of winter we feasted, while the men who had planted and harvested crops starved. Their sons worked our mines, and their daughters warmed our beds. The stories claim that the Old Way died with Herne the Black and his sons at Harrenhal. Our ships and axes were no match for Aegon's dragons, so our ancestors bent their steel into fishhooks and our kingdom into villages, and started telling the red tales around the fire of how we used to be strong, and how one day we would be so again. Generations later, a young boy listened to them. Dalton Greyjoy, the wild young heir to Pike, was rowing at 5 and reeving at 10 in the Basilisk Isles with his uncle. By 14, Dalton had sailed as far as Old Geese, fought in a dozen battles, and claimed 4 soft wives. In his 15th year, he avenged his uncle's death in battle, but he took a dozen wounds and emerged from the fight, drenched head to heel in blood. From that day forth,
Looking like some anime with
men
it.
called him the Red Kraken. During the Dance of Dragons, the Red Kraken picked the side that was fighting the Lannisters, and fell upon the Westerlands while the Lannisters were up at war. Casterly Rock itself proved too strong, once the Lady of the Castle barred its gates. But the Ironborn burned the Lannister fleet, and sacked Lannisport, carrying off gold, grain, and hundreds of women and girls, including Lord Lannister's favorite mistress, and all his bastards. The Red Kraken now ruled the Sunset Sea as his forebears had, and his longships again brought the old way to the coast of Westeros. But then the war ended, and the mainland armies came home. The Iron Throne commanded the Red Kraken to stop grieving, and when he didn't, a mistress opened his throat as he slept.
Jeez.
While his son squabbled, the Lannisters sent their soldiers to the Iron Islands. Thousands of men, women, and children were put to the sword, and scores of villages and hundreds of longships were put to the torch. The glorious return to the old way had lasted almost 2 years. My brother vowed to return us to the old way as well. He sat on the salt throne and sent our reavers to the shores of Westeros, just as he remembered from the stories he heard as a child. An old way for an old man. But while he listened to the stories, I lived them. It was never the old way to me. It was the only way.
Yeah. I wonder what your stories is like.
Circling the Jade Sea is the dream of every merchant. And the other side
Like you
is
said,
the
oh, I
Golden
did this,
Empire
that, and the
East,
third, but
which
like,
was ancient when the
what did it
Valyrians were
look
still
like?
fucking goats. Even its ruins dwarf every city in Westeros, and its princes are said to live in houses of solid gold and feast on meat powdered with pearls and jade. Foolish talk. If it were true, I would have visited them long ago. But a bold merchant will risk 2 years for one voyage, to fatten his holds with spices, gems, and silks, so that he never wants for anything again. To be fair, many never do, because my ship, Silence, finds them on their return. Their merchant dreams look so pitiful poured out on my decks. Not enough for any lifetime but their own. Traders from the Summer Islands make tougher prey. Not even the Silence can run down their sworn ships on the open sea. When we take them by surprise, our rams splinter and crack against their hulls, carved from rare hardwoods of the Summer Islands, and fitted together without a single nail. Worse, every sworn ship carries a company of archers armed with golden hard bows, which can hurl the shaft hard enough to pierce steel plate. After all that trouble, we often find their holds filled only with maps, fruit, and wooden trinkets. Hardly worth our time and blood, except for their women. To worship their god, all women of the Summer Islands learn to fuck. It's enough to make a man devout. Ebony's whalers are the most worthless of prices. The men of Ib are short, thick, and hairy. So are their women. Not even tales of their six-breast can tempt men to take them. But the Ebonese know how to build ships. Their great-bellied whalers can weather any storm and withstand the assaults of the largest beasts. In battle, the Ebonese are incredibly strong, and even their blood reeks of blubber and oil, and their holds are rarely worth scrubbing our decks free of the stench. When our holds were full or needed repair, we set a course for the greatest safe harbor of the Summer Sea, the Basilisk Isles, Port Plunder, Stye, or Skash. No map can find these towns, nor can the laws of men. The slavers keep their captives in caves on the Isle of Tears. Pirates trade their goods on Barter Beach, and hire fresh crews from the murderers filling every inn. Great piles of old yellow skulls line the shores of one deserted island. Offerings from captains who have fresh heads pinned to their masts. Once every generation, the free cities send fleets to destroy the towns and hang every man they find. They do, and the towns are abandoned to rot and sink back into the slime. But come the next year, another port plunder sprouts up somewhere else on the Isles, like a toadstool from a new pile of shit. For many years, I brought silence to the summer sea. But when I close my eyes, I hear the waves breaking below the bridges of Pike. I hear the Kingsmouth chanting my brother's name. Merchants paid the gold price, buying their desires with coin. Reavers paid the iron price, taking what we want from the corpses of the men who had it. But for what I dream, no gold can buy, and no iron can take. I must pay with fire and blood.
Is bro really finna pull up on Daenerys, bro? Like with Yara and Theon already there?
In the dawn of days, the children of the forest fought the giants. But neither race sought to destroy the other, or lay claim to the continent. They couldn't. The children hunted and fought with dragon-glass arrows and spears, and the giants had only the branches they pulled from trees. Nor could both races fill more than one of the 7 kingdoms of today. Then the southern deserts coughed up a new race, the First Men, who had crossed the narrow sea over the Arm of Dorne. Unlike the children and giants, the First Men lived in huts and villages and farmed the land to eat. And there were so many. As the numbers swelled, men needed ever more fields and timber. Of course, they saw that the great forests could provide both. When they cut into the deep woods, however, they stumbled on a strange sight. A white tree with red leaves and a face staring back at them. At first, they were afraid, but the face never spoke, even when the axe bit into it. The First Men didn't know what a werewood was. They didn't know that a werewood grows forever if left in peace, or that the native children believed their spirits went into it after death. The children had no letters or runes, all of the history, songs and prayers, only the trees remembered. When the children looked at the cleared fields, they saw not white stumps, but their ancestors now lost forever, with their bones stolen to line the invaders' walls. Driven mad by grief, the children attacked. The First Men had never seen a werewood, but the children had never seen bronze. Their dragon-glass arrows glanced off the First Men's shields, and their armor of woven bark split beneath the First Men's swords. As the war raged, the children resorted to the one advantage they had, the magic of their old gods. Their green seers enlisted dire wolves and snow bears, cave lions and eagles, mammoths and serpents.
This shit still wasn't
In
enough?
return, the First Men cut down and burned every werewood they could find, fearing that the children would spy on them through the faces in the trees. The children became desperate. Their green seers called down the Hammer of Waters to break the Arm of Dorne, destroying the bridge that men crossed into Westeros, and to flood the neck to contain men to the south. But the First Men would not be stopped. Fearing extinction, the children combined their powers for one last spell that would save their people and their land from the invaders.
For now.
By themselves, the children were too few to resist the onslaught. But if they could turn men's numbers against them. After hundreds of years and untold death and destruction, the wisest heads of the children and the First Men finally prevailed. The children couldn't win this war, and the First Men didn't want to win, fearing the cost of victory. Heroes and rulers on both sides met upon an isle in the God's Eye to form the pact. The children gave up all the lands of Westeros, save for the deep forests, and the First Men swore that they would no longer cut down the werewoods. Thus ended the Dawn Age and began the Age of Heroes.
Okay, bet.
Yet after the dawn must come the night. The great evil that the children unleashed in the war returned centuries later, and only an alliance between the children and men defeated it. Now it comes again, when the children are a shadow of what they were, and men have long forgotten. But the trees remember, and Brandon Stark must learn. Or, as we watched the first men, so we will watch the last.
I was finna say, like, I'm glad y'all, like, continue with it. I'm like, dude, they if you see the trees, you ain't gonna know, man. I was like, I know that ain't the reason. You made it seem like they went and big slaughtered you.
As a young
And you're like, oh, let's make this
I seemed
motherfucker.
to have 8 hands, each dipped into a stranger's pocket. But the other thieves didn't appreciate
Let's make these
my
motherfuckers
skill,
like
and they had size and strength
granny,
that I
like,
couldn't match.
take what you could.
When they discovered why,
Use any advantage
I was
you can.
beaten and told that a eunuch boy doesn't belong in the streets, but in the brothels, as any slaver would know. I managed to escape them, and took to sleeping in the sewers by day and prowling the rooftops by night. Barely one step ahead of starvation, much less slavery. Then I met Illyrio Mapatis. He was a bravo who lived by his sword, but his mind was sharper than his blade. I proposed an arrangement. I would spy on lesser thieves and steal their takings. Illyrio would offer help to the thieves' victims, promising to recover their valuables for a fee. Soon every honest man knew to come to Illyrio, whilst the city's cut purses sought me, half to sell me what they had stolen, and the other half to slit my throat. Sadly for them, Illyrio needed my throat more than he needed theirs. Most thieves, like most men, are fools who think no further than turning a night's plunder into wine. Luckily, as the other thieves had reminded me, I was not a man. Nor were those I hired with the gold we earned. I chose the smallest orphan boys and girls, the ones who were as quick and quiet as me, and taught them to climb walls and slip down chimneys. My little birds left the shiny trinkets for common thieves, and instead stole letters, ledgers, and charts. Secrets are worth far more than silver or sapphires. Later, I taught my little birds to read the letters themselves, and leave them where they lay, so no one would know of our intrusion. Illyrio and I grew so rich that Illyrio wed a princess of Pentos, whilst whispers of my talents reached the ears of a very anxious king across the narrow sea, who did not trust his son, nor his wife, nor his hand. Nor should he have, as I told him once I arrived and raised more little birds. They thought it the most amazing game to discover all the secret tunnels through the Red Keep, and listen to all the whispered secrets from within the castle walls. I often wonder what became of my little birds once I left King's Landing. Most likely they returned to Flea Bottom, or worse, grew up. One day I'll hear their song again. Until then, well, the world never lacks for orphans. Little birds sing in the west, and little birds sing in the east, and a harpy flies into a spider's web.
It wasn't until that whole Qyburn Cersei situation that when you said little birds, you're talking about children.